Hey, you guys. Okay. Gosh, I hate that I had to wait so late in the day to do this because it was on my mind earlier. And I'm one of those people that, it's better for me to be able to stop right then and get it on film or get the thoughts out. And sometimes I'll go ahead and write things down. But, as it stands, my life has been it's been a little more difficult to film in the past year and a half to 2 years. Staying with my mother in a small apartment. A lot of times I have to wait until she's either gone or, finished with whatever she's doing. We share a pretty small space, and it's kind of been difficult. And I've been really determined lately, though, to not let that defeat me, and to, for a while it was pretty defeating, like, oh God, I just give up. I just really didn't have the strength. I was going through a lot of depression, a lot of bad stuff. So I'm determined lately to stay on it. Just no matter what, when I get a chance to film, just get back on it and try to get that energy flowing. But sometimes it can be difficult to talk about stuff like this. I mean, it's hard being a content creator, period. It can be. Just depending on the personality, there can be anxiety involved. You're putting yourself out there. You know that there are going to be comments and reactions. Some of them might not be so great. Whatever, it just can be a thing. It can be a thing that messes with your energy, even if it's something you love doing, that gives you an outlet that you feel called upon to do for various reasons. Even if it's you love being creative, whatever it is, it can be hard just being a content creator. And just and some of the topics, that I cover on here. And I intend to, I've got a lot I want to do with this channel, you guys. And so I've been trying to stay on, being more consistent. And, I'm not a channel that's one specific thing. I'm not a Chris Watts channel. I'm not a true crime channel specifically. I'm not any one specific thing, but I do like to talk about a lot of times deeper, more heavier topics, and share knowledge about those things and awareness of either personal experiences or stuff that has happened to other people, cases that have moved me. And I also have a highly spiritual side, that certain things, teachings, whatnot, that just absolutely fascinate me, and personal experiences, things that I think are worthy of sharing. And all of that I'm going to be gravitating towards in the future. Basically why the name of my channel is Life of a Seven. I'm going to get into all that at some point, okay? But a lot of times I have to put out the videos as they come over my spirit, or as they come to my energy, come to my attention. I don't know why it's like that. First things first, I have been desperately wanting to get a video up about sleep paralysis. And I know there will be a lot of people out there that can relate or that are interested in it. And they will have all different types of experiences and what they think it is and what it is to them and what knowledge they have. But I want to get my personal experience with it out there. I've got a lot of experience with it, a lot of knowledge about it. And then what happens after that? Some fascinating things that I feel are worthy of sharing, that I just love talking about, and that I'm so anxious to get out there and get some feedback and possibly be able to network with some of you in the community that may know about it, that may have had it happen. So I'm really excited to move closer to getting some of those videos done. And that's the area I really want to start going towards. But there are other things sometimes that take precedence over that, or that I don't know, for some reason my energy feels drawn to speak on them more, like the Watts case, supporting Shanann Watts and sharing certain things that I know about relationship dynamics and, all those things. I don't know why it has to go in a certain order, or I guess because a lot of those things I have experience with too. And there's just so many things. Recently I've watched the Netflix documentary about O.J. Simpson, Made in America. And I was only 17 years old when that happened. And I didn't pay quite as much attention. Oh, I did read into it over the years in my 20s and 30s. And, I knew a lot about Nichole Brown and her background, and OJ and his background, and Ron Goldman, and you know, and I thought the whole thing was just absolutely horrific. And I've got a lot after watching this documentary, though, at this later age, and just really taking in all that court case and everything that was happening surrounding all of that, and just really being able to get to know OJ and Nichole and really look at their lives as a 47-year-old woman with the experience, knowledge, and wisdom that I have behind me now, rather than looking at them from a younger perspective. There's so much more I can see. And after having lived through some of the experiences that I lived in with certain relationships and certain personality types, oh, ho, ho, ho. I have a lot to say. At some point, I do want to get into that and gravitate that way, but that's a big one to take on. I have a lot of feelings about the O.J. Simpson trial and what happened to Nichole and Ron Goldman, and just what I could see in O.J. as a person, you know, because in a way it does trigger me, for the simple fact that I have had people in my life do the same things, be charismatic, wonderful people to the public, cool to all their friends, just have this persona, but yet I know differently. I know a different side of them. And oftentimes that is the way it is, bringing this full circle, because we're going to talk about the Watts case a little bit, certain elements of it, but bringing this full circle, that is what it is like with certain types of people who have very high pathological narcissism. And I say it that way because we all have narcissism, and sometimes we have healthy amounts of narcissism, as we should, and we keep it within a certain range. But that's what it's like with people who have very high pathological narcissism. Sometimes they have full-blown NPD, or sometimes they have very high narcissism with other disorders. I'm not a professional, but I do know that much. That is what it comes down to with people like that. And it's not fucking fair, because nobody knows it. Nobody even believes it. Okay? But oftentimes, if it is a man, then we, the women at home, it is only going to be his partner at home, the woman at home. It is only going to be a certain person that sees that horrific side, that can be abusive and have all kinds of darkness and quirks and bizarre things to their character and their personality. And if it is a woman, vice versa, a female pathologically narcissistic human being, then it'll be the same way. A lot of times they have a beautiful, a lot of times people get it stuck in their head that, oh, that a narcissist is just some openly, right in front of everybody, hey, let me just step on you. And no, the biggest, some of them are that brazen and open. But for the most part, the biggest part of them, the vast majority of them, think about it. I mean, I'm not religious or anything, but the devil or Lucifer, for instance, in certain religions, and oftentimes, is a person going to be willing to go with a man showing a little red man with horns and a pitchfork, or a gruesome demon with fangs and ready to suck their blood, or a vampire, or even a vampire? Think about it in those terms, though. Even though all that shit is fictional, I'm just saying, if darkness wants to exist, okay, oftentimes, and get away with what it's getting away with, oftentimes it is never going to want to be exposed. It is going to want to live as long as it can under disguise, under cover, and it is going to appear to people as to fit in with those people, longing for that adoration and acceptance. And oftentimes that is what is at the roots of a highly pathologically narcissistic person is an extreme need to be loved, adored, fit in, liked. There is a terrible inferiority and insecurity, even though they can look like some of the greatest people in the world, and O.J. Simpson did. He had charisma and confidence and fantastic football player, and he had it made. He had an extraordinary life. He was drop dead gorgeous, fantastically handsome, charismatic. People really loved him. And beautiful family, children, wife. Okay. Which brings me back to Chris Watts. Here we go. So as I was just food for thought for future videos and just kind of bringing it into the conversation while I was watching the OJ trial and the documentary on Netflix, and as it got into the marital issues and the personality of OJ, absolutely yes. Again, I thought of Watts. I thought, you know, they didn't have exactly the same lives and they didn't have exactly the same personalities, but it's exactly that shit. And it's exactly the same shit that I lived through with someone that I loved very much. Okay? And it's exactly that shit of Chris Watts had the same thing going on. He might not have had the life that OJ had and been as charismatic and confident. But see, even OJ, that's what it was all based on. The fact that he wasn't completely confident. That somewhere deep inside, OJ was quite damaged. And something from the childhood was going on in there. And he had this extreme need to avoid parts of himself, really. Deny parts of himself and become this, you know, he became addicted to fame. After his football career ended, he had this need to be adored, constantly adored, even if that means selling out your closest people or you're stepping on whoever you have to. He became addicted to that whole ego of, you know, I need to be liked. I need to be seen as the good guy. I need to make sure I'm still superstar OJ and, you know, the good guy. And especially with covert narcissism. And I think even though OJ could be cocky and charismatic, I think for the most part, like Chris Watts, his narcissism was more covert. He didn't like for people, he wasn't comfortable with people seeing that narcissistic side of him. Okay? And a lot of people always get it confused that certain things equal bad narcissism. But a lot of times what they're seeing is just healthy narcissism. A lot of people get it confused, like when somebody's just like, hey, yeah, cool, just getting confident, cocky, having a good time. Ooh, this looks good on me, girl. People will see that kind of personality and get it all fucked up. Like that's no, forget that. You know, that's just normal shit. That's usually just healthy amounts of narcissism. No, I'm just talking about a certain type of characteristic that I can see in both OJ and Chris Watts. I've talked about it in Yolanda Saldivar, the person who is responsible for taking Selena Quintanilla Perez's life, the little Mexican singer back in 1994, 95. Okay, I see these patterns, and just for the sake of conversation and relating this all together, okay, those three people especially stand out as the more covert type of narcissists. Now, don't get me wrong. People can move in and out of different types of narcissism at their will, because like OJ, like Chris Watts, Saldivar, and the person that I lived with for several years, and many other people I've been close to, I have seen them go from the more covert, charismatic, desperate to be liked and viewed as a good person. Everything's cool when we're in public, or when they're in public, when they're you know, or around family or friends. But the minute everybody's gone, that is when that mask starts to drop and that fucking classic narcissist comes out. That grandiose narcissist that doesn't give a fuck about what you think, what you feel. Get me a fucking beer. That kind of attitude. You know, they start acting this whole other personality behind closed doors. I've lived it. I've experienced it. I've witnessed it. It's crazy, okay? But it's true. And what sucks is that the public, the friends, the family, some people have known these people all their life and think they know them, and they don't. So, think they know some shit, and they don't. You know, I guess if they haven't had that experience or been around anything like that in their life, or they don't have that in their frame of reference, they can't look at a relationship and see what's going on there. They can't go, oh, okay, well, they can't even imagine it. They just take it at face value. Well, the dude looked good to me. He seemed pretty quiet, pretty nice, and I just can't imagine. She must have done something to provoke, you know? And they tried pulling that shit in the OJ case, too. That was a fucking nightmare. That whole case. And that whole defense. And, oh my God. Okay? Like, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. That one is going to take a lot of energy. And I'm going to have to, you know, be careful how I approach it and what I put into it. But, you know, at some point I do want to get to that. Now, Chris Watts. And specifically in this video, while I have some time left, specifically, I want to look at Nichole Kessinger and Chris Watts, and I'm not going to get too deep off into their relationship because there's so much I could say and there's so much to it. But I was noticing a comment on one of my videos this morning. I do this quite often, and it's okay. It's kind of my way of answering people back and responding, even though I do it, you know, I type it too sometimes. This particular video was one that I posted from the Sloan Bella channel. She is a teacher, a TV personality, psychic medium, astrologer. She's a very knowledgeable human being, and one thing I like about her most is that she's very knowledgeable about childhood trauma, having grown up in it herself with firsthand experience and having to work her way up through all of that. And she is able to mix the two perspectives of psychology and spiritual effects when a person has gone through childhood trauma and the fragmenting of the psyche and all of these things. She's just so knowledgeable about that kind of stuff. So it's not just her psychic stuff I like her for. She's just real, raw, down to earth, candid, no bullshit. I like her, you know, and in a lot of ways. But I made a short video. It's in my shorts collection, and I shared a clip from when she covered the Watts case. She has a 2-part video series covering the Watts case on her page. Now, Sloan Bella is also a person who not only does she like to help people through their childhood traumas in a psychological way and the spiritual aspects of it and all the things that can happen to people like that and addiction and how they can be very open to dark entity attachments and thought forms if those traumas are not correctly processed and able to work through them. Not only does she help people like that and you know, like to help people move that trauma if they can, but yes, she is also a psychic medium. She also channels energy of the deceased. She has tons of videos on her page where she has done, you know, covered a bunch of different dead celebrities, and sometimes she does the energy of people who are still living and talks about different cases. Okay. So she did cover the Watts case, and I shared a tiny clip of it in one of my shorts in which she was referring to Nichole Kessinger, and she was talking about how in the energy that she was getting off of it, she called it an unattractive spirit, an unclean, unattractive type spirit, basically was around Nichole. was around her energy field, getting into her energy field, and then it cuts off, okay? I could never explain it to you like Sloan Bella does, but if you're interested, I suggest you go to her page, her channel, and watch her videos covering the Watts case. And again, and I'm into that kind of thing. I think, personally, I need both. Not only psychological and scientific and critical analysis, critical thinking and logic, but at the same time, I also need my intuition, the things that I can pick up on in that way and feel and sense about energy. And I am very in tune with that. I need both of those as a balance. And sometimes I have to lean even more towards the intuit, and I won't be able to explain it. There won't be a way I can logically explain it or prove it. I just fucking know. And that is how it is. Okay? Take it or leave it. So anyway, but yes, I very much liked her version of reading the Watts case energy. Now, it could be very upsetting and very triggering for some people to hear. I mean, again, never mean any disrespect at all to the family of the deceased. I have nothing but respect for them, and I am on my channel here to do nothing but support and uphold the memory of anyone who's passed or been taken like that. And but I will say, again, these are things that I'm interested in, and I did like the videos that Sloan did, and I basically everything that she said that she felt in the energy, maybe with the exception of a few things, I completely agree with it. I completely got that feeling long before I saw Sloan's version. While I was studying the case earlier and long before Sloan did her version, the feelings I was getting off the energy of the case and the energy of Shanann and the dynamics between Chris and Shanann and the dynamics between Nichole and Chris and everything surrounding, I was getting very similar feelings about the whole shit, about his childhood, and just from, you know what I'm saying, just from having personal experience and knowing these types of dudes, types of people in general. It's not just dudes. I mean, I have a highly pathologically narcissistic mother. I have a lot of mother wounds, okay? Women can be just as hurtful and toxic as men, okay? So, yeah, that's that. But I was leaning towards exactly a lot of the same things that she breaks down in that video. So, let me talk about some things I want to point out, though, okay? Basically, all her videos did was, and certain other explanations to a lot of that shit, it just backed up and reinforced what I was already getting, that hunch, or already leaning towards that feeling, and hers nailed it home, just really resonated and made sense, really put it more into perspective about Chris Watts and this zombie-like, basically throughout his life, just kind of going along with things in a very zombie-like way and very detached from his mind and body. And that can happen to people, especially if they have survived some kind of childhood trauma and never gotten any therapy or help. They've had to repress it. Not only can psychological problems start to develop with all kinds of narcissistic defenses and ego issues and all of that, but at the same time, psychic, like spiritual problems can start to happen with people as well, and they are wide open for dark thought forms and dark entity attachments, and being so susceptible and so wounded, not dealing with their traumas, depending on what kind of trauma it was. I wrote back in the comment section on this video of my short, and I answered the person because somebody commented something to me about it and about Sloan Bella and something that was kind of irrelevant, but I explained all of this in that comment. Depending on what kind of trauma happened to Chris Watts or what was going on in his childhood, and him feeling low self-esteem, inferior turning into a people pleaser, very codependent. And I talked about this in another video. I don't necessarily believe that his parents are the ones that attacked or abused him. I'm not saying that. I don't know that for sure. Could have been something outside the home, football coach, at school, babysitter. I don't know. But I've talked about this in other videos, what I feel about that case, what I feel about his energy as a child, and things that his own mother has said about him acting quirky as a child and so guilty or so afraid and praying for forgiveness all the time, and she would walk in on him. That is in some of Cindy Watts' interviews, okay? So I've talked about this in my other video about Chris Watts. And so the thing is, this person commenting, he was like, on my short, I wrote, you know, you do the math, when I shared what Sloan Bella was saying about Nichole Kessinger having this. Sloan was basically putting it mildly, and not just coming out and saying fucking demon. She was just saying this unattractive, darker spirit was surrounding Nichole, and then the video cut off. And this person was commenting to my stuff, and they were like, and I wrote on there and shared it, and I was like, okay, you guys do the math, what that means. It was just a way for me to kind of share and spread awareness and draw attention back to Sloan's videos, because she's really good. And this one person was like, what do you mean? What math? It doesn't add up. And so I began to explain what I mean by the math. Well, that's exactly what that means. It means that, but I'm trying to explain it to you in a more practical way that I feel it. It's not just hocus pocus and voodoo and, you know, crazy spiritual shit. No, no, no. It has a practical, it comes from a practical place, and it all makes sense to me. When a person is traumatized in early life, like I think Chris Watts was in some way, shape, or form, not sure exactly how or by who, but at the same time, I don't think that he had the best relationship with his mother as a child. I don't think she was as mothering. And I've mentioned this before. This is not, you know, this is publicly been stated before. In one of his interviews, he said his sister Jamie was more of a mother to him than his mom. Now, I need to search that up and get links for it so that people can, you know, I would like to start including stuff like that, but I know I heard that come out of his mouth in one of his interviews. And so just picking up on his energy, I personally think there was also something going on with Chris and his mother in those years. I personally feel that Chris was closer to his father, and I'm basing part of this on the knowledge that we have publicly. That even Cindy has said Chris was very close to his father, more close to his father, you know, really about his father. He even confessed things to his father, okay? So, and worried about what his father thought of him, okay? So I think there were a lot of issues between Chris and Cindy. And, you know, I think that she was a narcissistic type of mother and whatever, what have you. Maybe she didn't respond as well. I went all over this in one of my videos about Chris Watts. What I feel very deeply that might have been going on in the childhood, and, you know, how whether something happened to him outside the home and he just couldn't tell it, couldn't get it out, but he had a lot of anger and fear, and, you know, angry with the parents for not just automatically knowing it, yet there's no way they could automatically know it. But that's a child thing, a thing a child would do, not reason well. Okay, well, people who don't heal stuff like that, they keep going into adulthood with that same kind of reasoning. I've seen 45-year-old dudes with that same kind of reasoning, and people in general, women too, just secretly hating you and expecting you to know everything, and because a part of their mind is stunted, is underdeveloped, could not continue to emotionally grow because of that trauma, and they never got help for it and never got to work through it. You see what I'm saying? And so, yeah, I've seen people have that very type of thinking as if they are still 5 or 10 years old. And in that scared childlike place of, I can't tell mommy, I can't tell, it would be so embarrassing. And they would be, children believe their parents are going to be angry with them because they got hurt by somebody else. Imagine children, just, they don't know, they don't reason these things. And so, but I know grown ass people that are still in that mindset, that still reason that way, that, well, you should know, just like my mother, I shouldn't have to tell you. And they'll be literally secretly hating you because you don't know what's wrong with them, because you just keep on going about your business and living your life, and because you don't know. It is the most fucking unfair thing about a covert narcissist, especially. They will hate you for shit you never did. It is so unfair. They will secretly resent you and hate you for stuff you never did, like a young child, because they are on a very emotionally immature level. And it's crazy. You don't even know it half the time till you've been with them a couple years. They hide that shit. It doesn't come out as well until you really get to know them much more and behind closed doors, and it can be a nightmare. So anyway, back to the whole thing, the short that I made. And so Chris Watts, something going on in the childhood. I think he grew up with something going on inside, and not as good a relationship with the mother. Whether it was she was too dominant, expecting him to be her golden boy, not really ever seeing the real him, and him feeling free to just be loved for exactly who he was as a child and accepted. And, I think a lot of those dynamics were going on, and I think he continued to grow up with a lot of rage stuffed inside. But it's very difficult for men to even admit that they're angry with their mother. They would feel terribly guilty about that and wouldn't want anyone to know. So they would just keep stuffing and stuffing and stuffing, and I know a lot of men like that. I was even with one of them for years that was not wanting to confront his mother, but was so angry with her. And she would get gaslighted all the time, and it was just pointless for him to even try. But whoa. Ain't nobody else going to be a scapegoat for that. You better get it directed to who it goes to. And you don't have to do it in a nasty way. You can still love your mother and hold her accountable and confront her about pain from the past that is now coming out in your 40s because you've been running from it or self-medicating or ignoring it all this time. But what you will not do is use me as a scapegoat for it. What you will not do is get the wires crossed, which is exactly what I feel like happened with Chris Watts. And Shanann was that scapegoat. Absolutely. Shanann was the fall guy, the scapegoat for everything. And that's what a covert narcissist does. Okay? Flip and flop and bait and switch and fool everyone. Okay? So, but yeah, getting back on topic. So the trauma in his life, whatever, what have you. And with that being said, that would have left him. I've talked about, my beliefs and feelings about people who are either traumatized in childhood, abused, neglected. They go through something that scars their mind or their psyche. And if they go that whole time without any guidance, any counseling, any help, any therapy, no one to tell it to or really work through it and process it, and learn how to rewire some of that shit and really work on their self-esteem and all these things. Okay, that leaves people, in my opinion, and what I believe and have experienced in my life and seen around me, that leaves people very open and susceptible. Not only to psychological things like being codependent, being people pleasers, having a big hole inside them where they desperately want to fit in, and all these things, can't set a boundary to save their life, narcissistic defenses. I've about seen it, done it all in my own past. Not only on the psychological point does it do that to them and cause all kinds of problems, mother wounds, father wounds, marriage problems, all kinds of shit, but on the spiritual side of things, it leaves them not only impressionable psychologically and easy to lead, and sometimes easy to manipulate, and they are manipulative at the same time. I've known a lot of folks like that. But it spiritually leaves them also wide open carrying all that they're carrying in a very unhealed way. A lot of them self-medicate, and drugs, alcohol, anything they can do to avoid the shame and the guilt and all the things that they've stuffed way back there all those years. They develop this type of personality with narcissistic defenses and substances and drugs and alcohol and distractions and becoming addicted to porno or sex or whatever. All kinds of things, not being able to totally connect to their partners. Always a part of them is floating out here somewhere, kind of disconnected. And I know it because I did it when I was younger. Part of me was always out here somewhere, not fully able to connect. I married twice, divorced twice in my early years, different relationships, and then lived on my own a lot of years too. And then 7 years ago, when I was 40, got in another very serious, very devoted, connected relationship that was very turbulent and chaotic. And I was very present for that. I worked on myself a lot of years, okay? And he passed away from cancer last year. But you get what I'm saying. I know a lot of these things because I did them. And so Chris Watts, but see, the difference with me is I was a person who had intervention. Thank God I had a lot of therapy. There was intervention in my family as a young girl. Even though I was running away and running the streets and very troubled, I was court ordered to a therapist. And I was put in different group homes and institutions and exposed to therapy. I was exposed to knowing, oh, we go talk about this stuff. We work on this stuff. You know, a lot of people, especially men, there's such a stigma on them, and it is so hard for them. A lot of men grow up in families where it's, we don't talk about that. You'll hurt mother's feelings. What do you mean? Or they are gaslighted, they are laughed off, they are scoffed at, or even attacked by their fathers, or attacked by their family members, or any number of things. And they are just so fucking angry about that. And they don't know how to go about dealing with that anger. Some of them drink themselves to death, drug themselves to death. I've seen that, a lot of that. Some of them go out and commit crimes, get in trouble, end up in jail, prison. Some of them get violently angry. Some of it comes out in their relationships, scapegoating it onto their partners. You see what I'm saying? If a person doesn't get professional help, and the earlier, the better. So that was kind of the difference with me, though. Even though I still struggled a lot, I knew to take it to my therapist. I knew to reach out and start communicating it and questioning it and processing my feelings. And think about it. There's a lot of men, especially men. There's a lot of women, too, that don't get that help and they just keep on going. But especially men with the fear and the shame and the stigmas of, that's a girl thing to get angry and go to therapy and to confront your parents, because that's a girl thing to feel mistreated by your parents, even if they beat the hell out of you or brought harm your way all the time or talk to you like a dog or put you in terrible situations, or they're manipulative, or they're just crappy fucking parents. That's a girl thing. Or, oh, I could never hurt my mother that way. They just get used to being raised in it. And a lot of times they're so warped by the time they get to their fucking early 20s that they don't know whether they're coming or going. And they just want to go right and get out. I got me a woman. And, and I think a lot of that was going on with Chris Watts. He had never fucking been able to process anything and was kind of just one of those people that was floating out there somewhere, just kind of zombieing forward in his body, as Sloan Bella described it. And there's a lot of ins and outs to when he and Shanann met, what happened, all that. That's a later day. But a person like that is very susceptible to dark entity attachments in the spiritual realm, dark thought forms, being easily led by corruption, keeping his mind distracted on bullshit it shouldn't even be on when you are supposedly married and a wife that loves you and children that love you, but it leaves them wide open so that all the psychological shit they already got going on is just compounded. Okay. And I do believe in energies like that. Absolutely. Dark entity attachments, thought forms that just get on people and vortex within you, especially when you're vulnerable, depressed for too long, vulnerable, going through a crisis in your life, addicted, so many things when we are down and vulnerable like that, or inferior, when we're insecure, when we are like Chris Watts, we feel low self-esteem or not, all those things that we need to kiss ass and suck toes, and we can never say and speak for ourselves. And anything that keeps you down in that energy too long leaves you wide open, of course, to darker psychological thoughts and feelings, being manipulated, led off into some bullshit, so it'll be exciting. It'll make me feel good about myself. And it also leaves you spiritually open. Okay, Nichole Kessinger, same shit. Let me wrap this point because the video is getting a bit long here. Same thing with Nichole Kessinger. And that is what Sloan Bella was saying. Okay. Now, I can never break the case down the way she did from the spirit world perspective, is the way Sloan did it. But the same shit. I feel like Nichole Kessinger was another person who, just like Watts, they had a very similar energy. I feel like she was more low self-esteem. I feel like she had some kind of issues from her past that she had not gotten right, had not been able to process and deal with. And I feel like inside she felt very inferior at times as a woman. And of course, and I've been there and done that too. I've lived a lot of those lives, a lot of those lifestyles, and a lot of those psychological patterns, and had to fucking outgrow them and work through them. And some of them I was not proud of. But naturally, going after somebody else's husband full force, and we all know, we're not dumbasses. We all know she looked Shanann up. We all know she was stalking them. And we all know that the whole time she was dating Chris, that she knew Shanann was pregnant. That she was going to her fucking Facebook page. Anybody with any sense would know that. Anyway. So, same shit with Nichole Kessinger. She was a person who was wide open. And let me tell you something too, y'all. When I say a person, I'll never be one of those people it's not coming from a perspective of, oh, the devil made them do it, and they were just so overcome with dark entities and demons, or that they just did not know what they were doing. Listen here, okay? Spiritual is not stupid to me. Just because I'm a spiritual person and I pick up on different energy forms and I lean towards believing and feeling different things and knowing that whole realm, and I'm more intuitive, that doesn't for one fucking second mean that I don't hold people accountable. Okay? Now, I do know that individuals are all very different. We're all wired very differently, and there's different things going on in different people in different cases. And, I have my times where I feel a little more empathetic towards certain people than others, but not for 1 second does that mean when I say someone had this in their childhood and they had that going on and they had spiritual attachments and this, that, and the other. Not for 1 second am I saying they're not responsible for that shit. They are absolutely 100% accountable for what they fucking did. They knew what they were doing. They were fully aware of it. It is no devil made me do it shit. But the way I see it is they are responsible for letting themselves get in that state in the first place. Okay? Do I feel like it is an energy vortex that can come over people when they're already low, when they're already corrupt, already broken, already got stuff inside them that they should have been working on? And an energy, dark energies and entity attachments, and it can vortex on them and compile in their brain and get on their energy field? Fuck yes, I feel that way. But Do I feel like we as humans are fucking responsible for what we do when we're down like that? It is our job to be responsible and accountable for getting up and fighting it, for reaching out to a professional, read the books, do the studies, whatever the fuck we have to do, meditate, get healthy, fight it. That is where I hold them responsible. It was Chris Watts' job, even if he grew up in a family not knowing any better, as a lot of men, especially men, do. In families where everything is like, we don't talk. We don't talk about those kind of things. And then they go on into the world, right? And their boys are the same way. Their friendship group. Man, we don't talk about that kind of shit. What do you mean? Your mom hurt you. Poor you. Okay, you get what I'm saying. A lot of times that is the shit men have to deal with. I have 4 brothers. And I've always had a lot back in my past. I was always homies, like close to males a lot of the time because of the fact that I did grow up with 4 brothers. And a lot of times in my relationships too, I was always friends with them too, like on a cool level. And they would confide in me. And, you know, over the years, I would get to learn and know a lot of things in the male psyche and care very much. I have 2 sons as well. I care very much about men. You know, and their emotional well-being and emotional maturity and intelligence. I cared very much about that with my sons. And a lot of times it's just like that. Men will be tormented, scoffed at, ridiculed, made fun of by their homeboys. And, you know, I've had dudes tell me, you know, it's not necessarily, but a lot of times it's also because they had the personality where they felt more comfortable to manipulate women. So they hung out with more women. They could get more that way. But at the same time, I've had them tell me it was also, well, I hang out with more girls because they're easier to talk to. They're not going to laugh at me. Okay. So that tells us a lot sometimes about, and I'm not saying all men, okay, but there is such a thing as toxic masculinity versus healthy masculinity and toxic femininity versus toxic healthy femininity, right? Okay. So yeah, there are dudes like that out there, and that is the toxic male environment. Absolutely toxic. And that is what a lot of them are facing, you know. I think a lot more than women. Women are far more accepted and accepting of you wanting to face your emotions, and this went on in my family, and this is the way I feel about it, and I've got to process this, and it's far more acceptable for women to do that. So you catch my drift. But is that me in any way giving somebody like Chris Watts a break and not holding him accountable? Absolutely not. You don't get no breaks, sir. That's the thing. It's our job before it ever gets that far. Even if we grew up in a family where nobody ever mentioned counseling, we made it to our 20s and we didn't know that our patterns and our thinking patterns were wrong, abusive, crazy, gonna lead up to something bad eventually. Even so, it's up to us. If we feel all that anger inside, and you know he did. He wasn't a completely stupid man. You know, they know things, okay? I've been around dudes like that, people like that in general, the quiet, covert, narcissistic, socially awkward, a little bit insecure, a little bit more vulnerable type. They know. And they actually get a power trip and feel sometimes superior because they have secrets. They're getting one over on everybody. Everybody thinks I'm this certain way, and there's so much to those personality types, but y'all get what I'm saying, okay? So both he and Nichole are fucking responsible. The minute in his life at any point, he could have stopped this, okay? He could have worked on himself. He could have worked on his marriage. He could have done anything. He could have asked for a divorce. He could have not taken, you know, after the first part with his wife, he could have not taken the children. Just at any point, he could have stopped. He is responsible. I don't care what kind of dark entity attachment vortex he got himself into with Nichole Kessinger. And I do believe it was all over Chris Watts before Nichole got there. So it's not going down like that. I'm not just going to foist it off on, he didn't get away that easy. No, it was his fucking responsibility. Okay? But yes, I do feel like the dark energies and entities brewing in Chris and surrounding him since his childhood probably, and him being so vacant and in and out and zombie-like. And that's another concept I want to get into and break down. How a man like that, in his position, will actually put a woman in control. Let me just say this. I think when Nichole came and that whole thing collided, I think that it was a very spiritual thing. A very dark spiritual thing, and it just compounded the energy vortex of darkness and fucking evil that was already rage and all kinds of shit that was already in him when Nichole came. All right, now, another point I want to make before the video ends. When a man like that is the way Chris Watts was, all the things I described, grew up inferior, shy, probably overly dominated by his mother, probably not seen and heard the way he wanted to be. A lot of times narcissistic mothers, you're the golden boy or else, they don't really listen to what the child has to say or what they want to be. Oh, no, they have a way of running over you without people actually seeing it as being run over, without you even knowing you're being run over. For little kids, just by not listening to you or your feelings, making you feel worthless. Oh, don't say those things. You're going to hurt my feelings. You're this and that's it. And, they have a way of imprisoning you and running over you and bullying you as a child without you really even knowing that's what's occurring. Okay. And when a man has grown up like that, the dominating mother or whatever the fuck, one of many things that could have possibly happened to him, and grows up really, but codependent on her for his self-esteem, for his approval. Is that better, mommy? Did I do the perfect thing for you, mommy? That kind of mentality. Okay, when a man kind of grows up like that, with all those kind of issues, feeling inferior about himself, but yet not well developed in his ego, not a strong sense of his own powerful identity, all these things, okay, I lived it. I've lived around several of them and I know what they do. Here's the trick that people don't understand, and they're always bashing Shanann for it, and it's bullshit. A man like that, after everything I've just described about Chris, will actually put other people in control, actually insist on them being the leader. Okay, so they are, and I'll tell you why a lot of times. The same shit happened to me. It doesn't matter if you're sitting there going, but babe, I do it every time. It's only fair. Don't you want to do it this time? Wouldn't you like to choose this time? What's your preference? It doesn't matter how many times you say that or ask them. It's almost like they're not in there. Oh, it's whatever you want, honey. They are so desperate to please you. Almost like they're running on autopilot from an old program, because they are, from childhood abuse or childhood domination or manipulation or something in the wiring from the child, from the mother, from the parent, from the stepmother, the caretaker, whatever it was. Okay, here's the tricks and the details that people need to know that they're so not aware of, that they couldn't possibly know unless they'd experienced it, but yet they sit up and judge and bash Shanann and blame every fucking thing on her, and they really don't know what they're talking about. Okay, so that cycle, right? I'll tell you why they're that way. After all that programming, right, as a man coming into their 20s and their manhood or whatever, they are so inferior feeling and so lack so much confidence in their own choices, judgments. They can be really awkward. They have so much fear and anxiety and insecurity about almost everything that they will want you to be the leader. Yes, and they will insist on it. Okay? Encourage it. I could give you 1,000 instances and examples of a scenario like that, right? But here's what happens over time. They put you in that role. It's not that you just walked in like, hey, take those pants off, boy. I'm the leader around these parts. No. It's not like that at all. And that's where people get it so fucking twisted and oh my God, all these unfair assumptions and judgments on people like Shanann. No. But here's what happens over time. A man like that will insist on you being the leader and, oh, whatever you want. And he's just, oh, anything for you to please you. And he's so afraid that if he says no, you won't like him anymore. Or he's so afraid that if he steps up and takes the lead but it's not about that. It's about his childhood. It's an old program that mommy won't like me anymore, that I never got through, could never do enough to please mommy or daddy or whoever the issue is with. Now, y'all follow me here. These are old programs that people don't realize when they're grown, okay? And they are addicted to that. They are running on that program, not really running into the marriage and the connection of the marriage and doing things for the sake of, well, I just like doing this to please my woman and I'm very secure within myself and I really don't care either way which one of us chooses that photo or hangs that photo or goes where today or who says what or boundaries or who spins what. Okay. They will fucking encourage you to do all of that, even go out of their way to encourage you to do it. And they lie. They say, I tried to talk to her. So many times I tried to speak up to her. I tried to tell her to quit spending or to talk to her about my feelings and she just runs right over me. Bullshit. No, they didn't try to talk to anybody, and no, they don't, nor will they ever, especially these covert narcissistic types. They will never let you know there's anything wrong with them. They do not come to you and ever say, hey, babe, listen, let's talk about this, okay? The spending is getting out of control. You know, I love you, but this is making me feel some type of way, and we need to talk about it. Or, hey, this has got to stop. Like, in no way, shape, or form, they are that terrified. I used to ask my partner so many times, babe, why didn't you just say something? And he would try to make me feel like they will swap it all over onto you, and it is not fair. You damn right I'm getting intense about it. Because that's exactly what happened in Shanann's Watts case. And I can't stand seeing people being made a fucking fool out of or a scapegoat for some shit like this. Because I know the secrets. I lived it for a very long time. And I'm going to make everybody aware of them. It's not right. But they will go out of their way to encourage you. Hey, you know, I just got some money today. Got to put my check in the bank, babe. If there's anything you want, go out and spend you some money. It's sick. And then later on, they will resent you for that. They will flop it all around that you're this horrible person, that you did all this to them, that you just take what you want. She spent up all my damn money. That's all she ever does. I'm telling you, it is sick and twisted. I lived with this exact thing, y'all, behind closed doors for a long time. Now, I loved this person very deeply, too.